Hi everyone, Nicole here. I am going to share my story in this video about how I went from a totally unrelated career to starting my own flipping business, which eventually evolved itself into a whole host of design, home design, and real estate related stuff. So I actually worked for 10 years in a totally different industry, in the fitness industry. When I had my son, who was born in 2014, I left the workforce. Prior to that, I had always been obsessed with houses, the real estate market, following the local market, looking at houses. I loved design. I had, bought a home with my husband, and we slowly made updates to our home, little kitchen, bathroom, paint, all the things. And I remember just loving it so much and getting a lot of good feedback from people who would come over and see it and thought it looked so great. And so it made me think kind of even a long time ago that this is something I'm really into, and maybe I'm pretty good at it. Maybe someday I could do something with that. Well, by the time I was out of the workforce for probably a year and a half, I had some people who were encouraging me to get into real estate and flipping. Now, it didn't hurt that my husband happened to have previously worked in commercial real estate a little bit, and prior to me ever doing anything in flipping, he had slowly acquired a few houses during the recession at really low prices and kind of got them rehabbed and rent ready and had a few rentals. So he at least was someone in my corner who had experience putting offers on houses, buying them exactly as they were, even when they're in dire condition, and hiring a contractor to do the basic updates they needed and get them ready. But he knew I was more of kind of like design minded. He wasn't thinking about that with his rentals, but he knew that I had an eye for doing things in a cost effective way, picking things that looked good, and had been encouraging me for a while to do it. So he happened to know someone who had been flipping houses here in Cincinnati for a decade or more. Anyone local or not local who knows Flippin' Wendy, who's huge on Instagram and still a very good friend of mine, he introduced me to her, and she was so forthcoming with information. And really, one of the tips I tell anyone who asks me, how did you get started? How do I get started? How does anyone get started in this? Is meet however you can and talk to and learn from people who are doing exactly what you're doing. And that was what Wendy was for me. She told me anything I wanted to know, and she made time for me and was just eager to be helpful, which was awesome. I don't think if it was for having a person like that in my corner, I don't know if I would have had the confidence to move forward. So by having even one person or can get introduced to who's doing what you want to do, it kind of creates a snowball effect of learning more and more people who are doing this in your city, who can connect you to the right people and help you learn things. Through one person, Wendy, I met wholesalers in the city, which I didn't even know what that was. And if you're watching this, you might not know what that is. A wholesaler are like those signs you see, we buy ugly houses, or we buy houses cash, close fast. There are all these people working these off-market deals, getting houses cheap before they ever, or if they ever even hit, the open market. And they often are flipping without really doing anything. They flip it over to a pool of investors who they're connected with. And they say, hey, we have this house. This is the price. This is what we think it'll cost to rehab. And the great thing about knowing the wholesalers in your area is these are not price escalation kind of give us your highest and best offer houses. You get in, you look, that's the price. As soon as the first person who wants it pays the price, they get it at that price. So while I have sourced deals on the MLS, I've sourced a few through wholesalers, and I've looked at many in both scenarios. So the networking helped me get connected to sides of this business I didn't even know were a thing until I met these people. Real estate agents who were also working in the business, had experience flipping or buying rentals. And all of these people, once I was ready to actually get started, they helped me find contractors, people who did hardwood floors, the best places where they buy great looking, good quality cabinets at, a fraction of the cost. And it just has continued over time my network has grown. The resources I've been able to get have grown as well. And that has all just happened through talking with people. So the first house I ever got was actually through one of the wholesalers that my friend Wendy connected me with. And when we first sat down and met, before he ever showed me a house, he talked to me about, along with Wendy, but they talked to me about how to set up my business. You need to have a tax ID number. You need to have an LLC or some kind of legal entity. You need to have these types of documents so that you can close on a house, so you can open a bank account. I had to, get an attorney involved and get these basic documents ready, get my bank account ready. They even told me about all the different ways that you can try to find money. And it just so happened, not everyone's in this scenario, but for me, I had a family member who had a large amount of cash saved and also had seen some of the work I had done on my own house and how much I was really invested in, understanding the real estate market. And this family member of mine was totally willing to partner with me. And he became a partner in my business that was the money side. I didn't really have any money at first, or very little, that actually came from a small inheritance in our family. And the way I personally structured my business with my partner was that he was considered kind of the money half, and I was considered the make this flip happen, do the design, handle everything from buying it all the way through to selling it. So he's really kind of like a silent partner there with the money. And once we agreed on those terms and how we split the profit, which for us was 50% went to him and 50% went to me, we created all those legal documentations, created this business, had money ready in a bank account, since most of these deals are cash, where you have to show proof of cash and you have to close usually within a week or two once you put an offer on. So that's a little bit of the backstory of how I personally got started. I really leaned on quite heavily the people I knew and had networked with, who I felt like I trusted, whose opinion I could trust, who weren't trying to compete with me in any way. They were in the same business, in the same market as me, and yet they were honest and open and sharing of ideas and information. They wanted me to succeed. And I think if you can find people like that in your corner, those are generally trustworthy people. They're not just trying to keep all the best deals to themselves. So that was a little bit about how I initially got started. And I will say that as I began looking at houses, I obviously had a finite amount of money. This is cash and there's a certain amount and that's it. And so I had to look only within a certain price point. I could only afford so much on a buy and a renovation. And considering it would be the first house I'd ever really worked on, I prioritized finding a very simple level renovation. This was not a house that we gutted to the studs. It was a very clean house, just a little bit dated, that someone needed to unload, and they unloaded at a good price. It was totally an aesthetic rehab, like paint, hardwood floors, put in cabinets in the kitchen, put some new tile and fixtures in the bathroom. I didn't have to do really high level, very deep detailed stuff at this time. But that was also, 4 years ago, and the market and the expectations of buyers has changed a lot in that time. So after I did my first one, I was successful with it, fortunately. I slowly began to, with each project, I felt a little more confident taking on slightly more complex renovations each time. I started very simple with the first probably two. Only by the third one was I doing that aesthetic stuff and, putting on a roof or doing anything with the HVAC. by probably the fourth one, I was, again, more confident, more comfortable. I, finished out a whole attic space that was formerly unfinished. I added bathrooms. I opened walls. I'd never done that previously. I think there's a lot that people wish they could do or want to do, or they have all these big ideas, which is great. You need to have ideas. But starting simple and starting small and starting with a low budget and in a neighborhood where you're fairly comfortable with the real estate market and have, some level of understanding of it is, for me, the way I started and what I would recommend to most people. And, fortunately over the years, the business has been, pretty successful. I'm running it generally part-time because I stay home with our kids full time, and I have to fit these things in and throughout it. It's definitely gotten harder over the last couple years with another child and everything else, but I've also been able to sort of expand and change the flow of my business depending on what I want to do at any given time. The work that I did on the flips led to more people interested in me helping them design or give them ideas for renovations for their own houses. I was able to develop a design consultation side of my business that actually was really thriving in the last couple years, where I wasn't really flipping at all. I've evolved into doing home photography and home staging because I didn't want to pay someone else to do it because that's money out of my profit and my pocket. So I taught myself and did those things, and I've been able to do that for some clients along the way too, and it's something that's also been pretty enjoyable. I just recently picked up my latest flip. It's been probably 2 years since I did a house, and my husband and I are kind of trying to go more full-time into it now. So there's a whole lot involved in this, and this is usually the first question people ask me with how did I get started, and it's obviously a very complex business. Everything I just mentioned, each of those things, from the money, the set up your entity, have some experience in home renovation, that's just the tip of the iceberg into all the actual things that a person is going to undertake when they're flipping a house. And my plan is to share my personal experience over a series of videos on this channel, digging a little deeper into each of those facets so that people have a better understanding of it, and I can share that information the way that someone shared it with me, which was the sole reason I was ever able to get started in this business and be even remotely successful. So thanks for watching. If you have any specific questions about my journey or any of the other topics you would love to see, please comment below. I'd also love to hear from anyone else who wants to or has shared their story about getting started in flipping wherever you are. Thanks for watching.